Good afternoon, all you lovely people, if you can hear me.
Good afternoon, Don.
Lovely day. I think that was Melissa's voice. The news bulletin, the robins are out. Hello.
Hello, this is Stacy.
Hi, good afternoon, Marty and Stacy. This is Clint. I can hear you both.
Great, thanks, Clint. Hey, Marty.
Hi, everyone. Can folks hear me okay?
Yep, sounding good.
Can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Okay, well, we have everyone in attendance, so I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. We have one member. Agenda item number 2, we also have proof of notification, and I'm no longer passing that off to the administrator. Folks probably noticed that I emailed out the agenda this time, and I used Administrator Langrecht's list from the last meeting to get it out, and then he posted it on the bulletin board. Agenda approval is agenda item number 3, so I'm looking for a motion to approve this agenda today.
Was Linda ISO approve?
This is Dave. I'll second.
Okay, so a motion by Gentis and a second by Turk. Any discussion on the agenda? Okay, all those in favor of the agenda, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Chairman,
Okay. Oh, yes, go ahead. Supervisor Seat.
yes, I didn't, I had my mute button on, so I wasn't able to ask for discussion.
Yeah, go ahead. We can still allow that.
Yes, there is an agenda item here, and I believe it's number, is it 13?
Yes, the complaints regarding access to
Yeah,
court resources. Yeah.
I'm adjusting my eyes here with my magnifier. And you indicated in your memo to us this morning or yesterday that you had not had time to post this publicly. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. I did not post the, usually with each agenda item, there are meeting materials available. And I did not request that the meeting materials for agenda item 13 be posted, but I did email to the committee members the complaints that I received.
Yes. And so that the agenda item itself has been posted publicly in 3 places in the county?
It has, yes.
On the bulletin board and so forth. All right,
That-
I misunderstood your memo. Thank you.
Oh, no, that's okay. And also, just to let you know, I did let one of the
I saw that.
Oh, what was that?
We saw that.
Okay. All right, so anyone opposed to the agenda? Okay, so that motion carries, so we do have this 15-point agenda to be working from today. Agenda item number 4, previous meeting minutes. I'm looking for a motion to approve those minutes.
This is Melissa. I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Luck.
I'll second it.
Okay, we'll do a second by Supervisor Brewer. Mix it up a little here. Any discussion on the minutes? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Agenda item number 5, tax deed ordinance and process. So we deal with quite a few tax deed sales in this committee, and then we also approve, I believe, even before we have the sale, we approve taking properties for tax deed purposes or something. Maybe I don't have my language right. But one thing I've noticed throughout this is that I've got a lot to learn about how the tax deed process works. So I contacted Treasurer Keller, and she sent me a couple of documents that list out all the different steps that have to be taken, not only to notify people of delinquent property taxes they may have, but then also after that process is complete, selling the property as a tax deed property. And I'm probably not getting all the language right because there's a lot of legalese. But I was hoping that today we could just look over all these documents, ask any questions of the treasurer about these documents, get a little familiar with the ordinance and the state statute that this committee has some responsibility for carrying out. One of the things that I learned when I was pulling all this stuff together and working with Treasurer Keller to do that was that this committee, the Finance and Personnel Committee, can recommend that tax deed property be sold with a realtor contract, that we recommend that a realtor go with certain properties. So I thought, that was interesting to learn. I think we can actually do that before it goes up for sale, because properties do come to this committee before we actually hold the tax deed sale with the public. So with that, I'm just going to hand it off to Treasurer Keller and see if she has anything she'd like to add to my quick introduction.
Okay. Well, do you want me to go through some of this, or I'll just be open for questions if you've already read through it all?
I think maybe just a couple minutes, if you don't mind, just giving an overview. Don't feel like you got to read through everything, but
okay. Okay. Well, I'll just start in the beginning then. The tax bills are mailed out at the end of November and beginning of December. And the taxpayers have the option to pay the first installment by January 31st and then go interest-free until July 31st. But if they do not make that January 31st payment, then state law says that you've lost your option to go interest-free till July 31st. So in other words, if that first installment payment is not made by the 31st, then you begin paying interest at 1% in February. And it is interest on everything, not just the first installment, but the entire tax bill. So interest stays in place until it's paid off in full. And our interest rates go up 1% at the beginning of each month and then remains the same all month. Okay, so if you do not pay your taxes by January 31st and you're delinquent, we send out delinquent notices every other month. And then on September 1st, that's when we print our sale book, and that lists all the delinquent parcels for that current year. And we mail them out notices then, telling them that that we've taken tax certificate. I mean, it's considered taking a tax certificate when we have all of these parcels in our sale book. And what that means is that if they do not pay these within 2 years, that the county can take tax deed to their property. Okay, so then those that have the previous delinquencies, around December 26th then, we do mail out letters notifying the taxpayers with their delinquent taxes that they are getting close to their 2-year redemption period, and that we're required to publish in the newspaper in February if they do not pay us by that January 31st. And that is the next step of beginning tax deed action. So then in February, we go ahead and publish it. The notice is called the expiration of time notice, and that publishes everyone who did not pay by the 31st. This year we published the 2018, so excuse me. Okay, then in March, after the publication, we send out a notice to the people who did not pay and give them the option of paying monthly installments, and that's also allowed by state statute. So we closely monitor those who get back to us and choose to make monthly payments to make sure that they are keeping up with their installments. Then in June, if we have not received any response, then we have a yellow insert that we put in with the reminder notices to get their attention again that tax deed action may begin soon. And then the next step is we do a listing for our corp counsel, and his office drafts a letter, and it's on their letterhead, which I think is a little more scarier than ours. So they receive a letter from the corp counsel requesting payment of the delinquent taxes to avoid tax deed action. And this does bring in quite a few payments, so it is worth the time. Okay, and then in December, if we still do not get a response to all of these mailings, we do a letter that says this is your final notice. If sometimes we do some other correspondence, but after that, then we begin action, and the first step to that is to order a title search from our local title company. And this title search tells us whoever has any interest in this property. So we are required to mail notices to anyone who has any liens or has any connection to the property. I usually forward these title searches to the corp counsel, and he always researched them, and then he would let me know who I have to notify by certified letter. Once that's done and we receive all the receipts back from the certified mailings, then we count 90 days from the day of the last receipt. And after the 90 days, then I turn all the documents over to the county clerk, and the county clerk puts it on the agenda for the property committee and recommends a resolution to the county board, excuse me, to the county board to take the property. And then the county board adopts a resolution to take the tax deed to the property, and we still can allow them time to pay if they want to, because we are not the legal owner yet. But the corp counsel prepares the deed then finally, and the county clerk records it. And then 10 days after the deed's recorded, we must send out notices to the former owner and telling them that they have 30 days, that they still can regain ownership of their property. But now we are the rightful owner, so they have to pay all delinquent taxes, interest, and the $1,000 fee, which the county had set as the average cost incurred by the county, plus $30 recording fee. We haven't had that happen. Only one time we had someone come in and pay off what they owed before we actually took tax deed. Otherwise, we haven't had this happen so far. Okay, then the property that's owned by the county gets presented back to the property committee, and the property committee appraises the property, which means they set a minimum bid on it for sale. So the county clerk then advertises the sale for 3 weeks and posts it on the county's website. Then it goes back to the finance committee, and they present the property for sale, and they open the bids with the minimum bid and award the sale of the property to the highest bidder. So upon payment, then the corp counsel prepares the deed to the buyer, and the county clerk records it. Then there's another step that if the former owner occupied the property as their residence anytime during the past 5 years before the deed was recorded to the county, we must notify them by certified mail that they have a right to request in writing within 60 days after receipt of the notice any sale proceeds. And that means that if we have any money left over after all the taxes, interest, and county's expenses, then there's a formula that we have to fill out, and they are eligible to receive some of the proceeds. So I guess that's kind of a quick overview.
Yeah, thank you for giving us that overview. And it's very complicated, and not only and Treasurer Keller didn't even mention Chapter 74 and Chapter 75 in state statutes. I skimmed through Chapter 75 because that's where the Finance and Personnel Committee has some responsibility. But she's got Chapter 74 to follow. It's a very complex process that occurs here with a lot of players. So I just wanted to let everyone know, a lot of times our names get published in the paper that we're selling properties on the Finance and Personnel Committee. And then you see lists of people in the paper. And I just wanted to, since Treasurer Keller, she's the main subject matter expert, wanted everyone to know the complexity of the process and give you a chance to ask any questions. So are there any questions from committee members?
Mr. Chairman.
Yep, Supervisor Seat.
Thank Julie for her very fine tutorial, which is basically a board education item for the edification of the board. It's very clear to us that most of the responsibility, duties, and authority for this rest with the county treasurer and with some responsibility for the property committee and the county clerk. Our role as a finance and personnel committee is very limited. The basic authority for this rests with the county clerk. But it's a good board education item.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Can I just add something here?
Of course.
I just wanted to mention and point out that I think it does explain that we do give them a lot of chances. I mean, we don't want to take anyone's property. So it just kind of points out there's a lot of steps here that we do give them a lot of chances and opportunities to make payments and so on. So just wanted to make that point.
Yep. It's very evident as you walked through all those different steps. So anyone else? I am not aware of us ever selling a property through a realtor. Maybe people with more experience on the board are, but we do have that.
Have.
Yep. Okay.
We have. It hasn't always worked out. Sometimes it does. It depends upon the peculiarity of the property.
Okay. One thing I've noticed that one challenge I've seen is that it can be kind of tough to figure out what properties that we as a county have for sale to the public. I believe we now add the addresses, if there is an address, to the sale of the property that's posted in the Richland Observer. We post it on the website, but oftentimes these are described as parcel numbers in descriptions. One idea I've had is it might be nice to have some sort of a sign that goes up on some of these properties to sell them. I know we're going to be at our next meeting, we're going to be selling a vacant lot in Hub City. And then I believe there's also a parcel in Aiken Township that is just an acre or so. And it's just one idea I've had. It might be nice if we had more ways to get this out to the public. Although saying that, I should also mention, I know that Treasurer Keller contacts property owners sometimes directly if they're adjacent to a property, or she contacts people who she knows might be interested. Is that right, Treasurer Keller?
Yes, that's correct. And we've had people call here as well, inquiring about some of these properties. So I keep their names and information, and then when it comes up for sale, then we notify them, or the clerk's office does.
Okay. Well, thanks again. And I guess we'll go ahead and move on unless anyone else has any anything else, unless we had an action listed out on this one. I can't remember. Oh, just a motion to receive and file all this information. So looking for a motion there.
I'll make that motion. This is Melissa.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Luck.
Just seconds.
Second by Supervisor Gentis. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, is anyone opposed? All right. Thank you, Treasurer Keller.
You're welcome.
Okay, moving on to agenda item number 6, which is County Clerk Deputy position. I'll hand that off to Supervisor Luck.
All right, so I'm just, essentially today we are looking for a motion to recommend that the position of the Accounts Payable Specialist that is currently under the supervision of the County Clerk and filled by Miss Amy Lewis remain in that office indefinitely. This is the position allocated to the County Clerk that can be deputized if they desire. The County Administrator should work with the County Clerk to rewrite the job description to include all Accounts Payable Specialist duties as well as any additional Deputy Clerk duties and title desired by the clerk. County Administrator will review the position with the County Clerk in 6 months to evaluate how well the arrangement is working and report to the Finance and Personnel Committee. So in addition to, there was an Excel spreadsheet that goes along with this agenda item. Essentially what I did is I emailed every county clerk in the state of Wisconsin to ask them how many deputies they have. And many of them provided me with additional information as well. And I tried to note that anywhere where they provided me with additional information. I was really surprised at how willingly they shared information. They were all very helpful. I mean, there's a lot of things I think you can get from this spreadsheet, but I would say that the biggest thing is that you can see that every county is different. They handle things, you know, it all depends. Many of them would qualify, like they have 2 FTEs, but we handle all the passports. And I don't know what it entails handling passports, but that seemed to be something that came up quite a number of times. But what really spoke to me about this table is that it's also evident that there's a lot of sharing of positions among departments in many counties, including sharing administrative staff between the county administrators or sharing of deputies between departments, elected offices. So, you know, when looking at this and looking at how our current arrangement is working with having our accounts payable specialist continue to just be in the clerk's office and available to the clerk for any duties that he needs performed as a clerk's function, but also then doing the accounts payable duties. At this point, to us, to the committee, it made most sense to leave that position there. You know, because we want to go through this next budget process to see where we are financially, to start evaluating positions and across the entire county. So I think if we leave the position where it is, we can still get all of the duties done that we need and give the clerk the support that he needs and reevaluate in 6 months. So that's pretty much where the committee landed. I mean, we recognize that this may not be a permanent solution, that there may be other options out there, but for now, while we're in this transition period, this made the most sense to us. So I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Supervisor Luck, I did notice, and I think I was at the last meeting that you had. The Iowa County Finance Director came, and I know in the spreadsheet it says that Iowa County has a model similar to this.
Sorry, correct? Yes, I should have brought that up. Yes, so we spoke at length with the Finance Director of Iowa County, and they actually have their county clerk deputy is actually does the accounts payable entering for their county. So that was one example of how there's, you know, the financial duties are being shared across departments, and that person works with the finance department, but also with the county clerk doing clerk duties. And the clerk is the supervisor of that position, and we would have that same model here where the clerk would be the supervisor, would continue to be the supervisor of that position.
Okay, thanks. Other committee members, questions for Supervisor Luck? Or comments?
I
Supervisor
just want to say
Jacobs?
that I found it very enlightening to see it. I thought that what you're doing is pretty much in line with everybody else.
Okay, anyone else?
Mr. Chairman,
Yep, Supervisor Seat.
Ms. Luck, how does this relate to the discussion about the clerk having the statutory authority to appoint a full-time deputy clerk?
So I had, I previously have had a couple conversations with the Wisconsin Counties Association lawyers, asked them specifically about this scenario. And it was his opinion that our duty is to allocate a position and
Pardon me, obligated? Did you say obligated?
we are obligated to provide the clerk with a position in his office. And that's what we've done, what we are doing. We're allocating a position to his office. Now, I understand that it is complicated by the fact that that position is filled by a person. So the clerk can name that person as their deputy, or he can choose not to name that person as his deputy. The Wisconsin Counties Association said this has come up in numerous counties before. And generally, or in every case, the county clerk assigned that person as their deputy. So if our county clerk does not want to designate that person as Amy as his deputy, then we will, I'm not sure exactly what we will do, and I will have further conversation with the Wisconsin Counties Association about how to handle that appropriately. But I was told that by the Wisconsin Counties Association lawyer that we are within our authority to do what we are doing with this position being allocated to the clerk's office. Does that make sense?
I understand your reasoning.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Supervisor Brewer.
the comment was made a full-time emphasis on full-time position. I read the statute. I don't think it said all it talks about is a deputy clerk. Isn't that correct?
Do you want me to answer that? Yeah.
If you
So
would.
yeah, so you're correct. The statutes say that we are obligated to provide a deputy, but nowhere does it say full-time. And I did ask the Counties Association lawyers to help me understand that as well. And they said that it does not anywhere state that it has to be a full-time position. And in fact, as you can see from that spreadsheet, there are counties that do not have full-time deputies.
Thank you.
Okay, good questions. Anyone else? All right, if not, we're looking for a motion to take those actions that the Administration Transition Committee forwarded onto our committee.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Luck.
It's Dave, I'll second.
Second by Supervisor Turk. All
Question.
those in, oh yeah, go ahead, Supervisor Seat.
So you said take those actions that are forwarded by the transition committee. Would you specify the action that we are taking?
Absolutely. So the motion is to recommend that the position of accounts payable specialist remain in that office indefinitely. And that that position of accounts payable specialist can be deputized by the county clerk if they desire. There's a couple more sentences in here, a couple more points in the motion. One is that the county administrator should work with the county clerk to rewrite the job description. And the second part of it would be that the county administrator should review the position with the county clerk in 6 months and come back to this committee to report on how the arrangement is working. Okay, anything else? Is that sufficient, Supervisor Seat?
It's a little foggy for me, but I'll accept it.
Okay. All right. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion carries. So thanks to the administration transition committee for getting that to us. Much appreciated. I know it took a lot of work. Okay, agenda item number 7 is salaried versus hourly employees. So for this agenda item, this is a follow-up on Supervisor Cooey's request to have a discussion on salaried versus hourly employees. And so what I did is I attached the wage structure document, which shows the grades and steps we have. And there are a few in that attachment A, there are a few people at the very end of that document that are shown as salaried. They're mostly our elected officials, like the sheriff and the clerk and the treasurer. With attachment B, then that's the staff authorization table that we've reviewed at this committee a couple times. And here under FLSA status, that column, there's an exempt versus hourly option. I just saw an appointed one go by too. So I'm going to hand it off to Supervisor Cooey. We've got some information in front of us just in case we need to reference this, and we can have a discussion here.
So the only reason I brought this up is when you're talking department heads, in my, I guess the life I live, anybody that's in a department head or a supervisory role is a salaried position. The reason for that is I guess our hours are not dictated to a 40-hour work week or whatever, and our salary is based off of probably a 45, 50-hour work week. But then when you get into people being called in, like on-call work, something like that, a salaried role, that's kind of just accepted in that role. So if I get called in the middle of the night, I don't get paid anymore. It's just part of the job that I do. Or if I get called on a Saturday or whatever that is. And I was just curious, how much do we pay for on-call? And how much, sometimes it can be people just call just to call. And if you start putting some better guidelines, some better training, so on and so forth, it could be a reduction in how much money we pay in wages every year. So that is the reason why I brought it up. Now it's just a question more so than anything to put some, let's look at, of course, we're looking at where we can save money. And you would take them, when you talk them salary wages, most likely you're going to look at, if you change people to a salary position, you're going to look at, how much they made over the past 3 years. And if they've had a lot of on-call pay or so on and so forth, you're going to kind of meet in the middle of the road of that just because it kind of dictates what they've already been doing. But I don't know, just something to think about.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep, Supervisor Seat, go ahead.
I can appreciate Mr. Cooey's question here. This business of whether a person is on salary or on hourly wage, that's all governed by the Fair Labor Standards Act, and it's determined not by anything other than the kind of duties that the employee performs. I've worked with this for years in terms of classifying employees and having a determination made by the in accordance with the Fair Labor Standards Act. And a person on the line, most of the department heads I would consider salaried employees, and most of the other folks working in the office, depending upon what they do, what kind of duties they have, would be classified by analysis according to the duties they perform as to whether they're hourly or whether they're on salary. Uh, whether a person is on call or not depends upon what he or she is on call for. You know, the sheriff is on call, but he's a salaried employee. The director of human services is on call, but she's a salaried employee. Could be on call for a number of issues, as is the highway commissioner. So it's a big puddle of soup here that is far beyond getting a full understanding here in our meeting. And I think you know, you have a labor lawyer if you want to get into that, and you have Carlson and Detman who categorize and classify employees. So let's be careful with our attempting to do this. I'm just uttering a word of caution here.
Okay, I'd like to ask a few questions just to clarify how things currently work at the county. So and this might be for Mr. Langreich, these questions might be for you since you got a lot of experience with HR, unless other folks know the answers, but is exempt the same as salaried?
You're kind of, when you start talking about Fair Labor Standards Act, the thresholds that are put in place are based on how much an employee is making, and then what are the duties that would hit the criteria that allow you to put them in an exempt kind of a salaried role. So if they're meeting the threshold of over the annual amount of pay, and they're whether they're a technical programmer or a nurse or considered to be in a higher level of management type of position, then you can exempt them from FLSA, the FLSA rule that would entitle them to time and a half at hours worked over 40. So that's the main piece of the federal type of a law. Now, when we start talking about what we're doing at a local government level, there's often some gray areas that you operate in for multiple reasons. A classic example that you will see probably through most of the counties and municipalities that have this type of employee is like when you say like your registered nurses. By Fair Labor Standards Act, you would be able to classify them as exempt and not pay them time and a half at 40 hours. Well, practices, we would usually call them exempt, but then we'd usually incorporate some type of a compensatory time at a 1-to-1 ratio or 1.5, just for the sake that that's what the market operates on. And if you're trying to keep up with hospitals and private healthcare facilities, then you kind of have to do that. There's other exemptions that you might do as well with that. So from a standpoint of exempt and salaried, there could be situations where you're considering somebody exempt from time and a half, you're offering them a salary amount of what goes through the payroll system, but for purposes of competitive nature and for perks of a compensation package, you might offer them compensatory time or some other type of a perk without having to do it by a federal Fair Labor Standard Act, but doing it for the sake of recruitment and retention. Did that answer your question, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, I think the answer is no. It's not the same thing.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's maybe the long way of saying no.
That's okay. And then on our wage structure document, like, say I think a couple department heads were brought up, highway commissioner, health and human services director, we have them at different steps. They aren't, so we can see their hourly wage on our wage structure. We don't have them listed as salaried employees. So is that an accurate way of saying it? Is that they are paid hourly and not salaried?
On our list, our tracker here, is something we would want to scrub again to make sure, because they are in the system as exempt and paid by salary, to the best of my knowledge. I know too, with our maintenance supervisor position occupied by Randy Nelson, that's a position that I think historically was an exempted salary position, and recently in the last year or two it was switched hourly again, and that was done again with a retention or recruitment retention mindset of trying to account for all the additional hours that were needed in coming in on weekends, late and after hours, as an example.
Okay, and then, so are we paying exempt employees overtime, or are we giving exempt employees comp time? What do we do currently?
I would have to research it to see what we're doing for departments. I'm not sure on what the standard is across. I think there's probably different languages for what we're doing with Health and Human Services versus what we're doing at the courthouse versus what we might be doing with other departments.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay, yep, Supervisor Seat, go ahead.
This business of department heads and so forth showing an hourly rate has to do with the payroll system more than anything else. Instead of paying people on a bi-monthly or a monthly basis, bi-weekly or a monthly basis, we are paying them every 2 weeks. And so in order to compute their annual salary, they're dividing the annual salary by the 52 weeks. And that's why you see it on an hourly rate there. But in fact, as Clint says, they are classified as exempt employees. That hourly rate only is because of the convenience of the payroll system.
Okay, and then Supervisor Cooey, a question I had for you is, you mentioned department heads specifically, but when you go to that staff authorization table, we have many employees who are exempt, not just department heads. Is your question about just department heads, or is it about all exempt employees at the county?
I think it has more to do with when you start talking lead workers and stuff like that, maybe not a lead worker, maybe anytime you classify someone a manager or a supervisor, that's where my question would be. Are these people on a salaried position or are they on an hourly position? Meaning, okay, so do they get overtime? Do they get all this, whatever it may be, whatever other benefits, on-call pay, so on and so forth? That's where my questions lie.
Okay, so it sounds like it's for basically all of our exempt employees you're wondering about.
Yep.
Okay. Any other folks with questions or comments on this?
Mr. Chair, this is Tracy from Health and Human Services. I'm wondering if I could offer a little bit of information since Health and Human Services has probably the majority of the exempt staff.
Sure, go ahead, Ms. Larson.
The county handbook does have language in it related specifically to comp time earned and department heads. Department heads are not allowed to earn comp time and are just paid their regular rate of pay. So there's not comp time accrued by department heads. For other staff who are considered exempt, they do earn comp time. They are not paid overtime. So the employee handbook allows staff to earn or bank comp time up to 40 hours that they are able to take off at a later time, so they can accrue up to 40 hours in that bank and use it similarly to other benefit time that they're allowed to take off.
And this is in the employee handbook and it's not in the HHS addendum?
The comp time rule is in the employee handbook. There is some specific language in the HHS addendum, especially related to after hours on call compensation.
Okay. Okay, and Tom, Mr. Rislow from Pine Valley is saying they have a similar situation out there in the chat box. Any other committee members who haven't spoke up on this have any questions for staff on this or for Supervisor Cooey? I wonder if maybe a next step is to get a summary of our current policies within the handbook and the addendums and understand the complexity of this. That might be a next step at a future meeting. Supervisor Cooey, do you think that would be a
Yeah, I'm kind of interested in the on-call pay too, just to see how much we're paying out a year in on-call. I think that'd be good for everybody to understand that.
Okay. Well, I think this might be a future agenda item, so we'll keep it out there. And thank you for bringing this forward to us, Supervisor Cooey, and to others for adding in. Okay, agenda item number 8, the 2021 adopted budget document. So let me see. Let me open this one because I had written this one. Oh, okay. So here I've got a motion to recommend to the committee to receive and file this document and direct MIS staff to post it on the county's website along with the 2020 adopted budget document. So, you know, last year when we were setting the budget, we prioritized adjustments compared to what the administrator had proposed for a budget back in September, but we never reviewed a budget that compared 2020 and 2021. And so I did request that document a couple months ago. I did get it from Mr. Langrek, who got it from the clerk. I thought it'd be a good idea for us to start looking at this document and get familiar with reviewing what happened last fall and its effect on this year's budget. And then also, I'm thinking that it would be good to have this out on the website. I know I used the 2021, or I used to use it back when we were in 2020 when I was trying to remember things. I would go to the website and take a look at that document. So I'm thinking we might need a budget page where we start posting our budgets from different years, so that we've got a spot where all the committee members and county board members and employees and the public can be looking at our budget. I just wanted to walk through this document as I understand it, but I'm no expert. I'm just sharing with you, what I know. On this page that I believe Mr. Langrek is scrolling right now or showing this to us. Is that right? Is that you?
Mr. Chair, this is Administrator Langrek. Yes, I'm the one that's sharing. So let me know if you want to go to different documents or up or down. Or, I mean, do you want to share it? Would you rather share it, Mr. Chair, if you've got
No, if you don't mind scrolling along, because I don't quite know how to do it on my iPad.
Okay.
So,
Can I?
yeah, yep. Go ahead, Ms. Scott.
So we're happy to put this on there, and we actually did get the request from Clerk Vlasic, but nobody could really tell us what they wanted, where they wanted it. Like last year, we had more of an introduction, and we're happy to replace these documents out there if that's what you desire. But we did not understand what anybody wanted us to do with this.
Yeah, that's why I thought we better bring it to the committee, since I didn't see anything happening. So we'll let the committee weigh in after we look at these. So there are many different accounts here. I don't know if these always coincide with fund numbers, but a lot of the things we're interested in, say land conservation department, highway department, what's the institutional cost funds at the Health and Human Services Department look like. You can see a lot of comparisons on this document. At the very bottom of this page, there's a line I believe called general. I can't quite see it. It's coming. Yes, general at the very bottom. That's a really big one, and that one really confused me at first when I first started digging into this budget document a couple of years ago. And if you go to the following page here, it is, I believe. So this is a second tab on a spreadsheet, and a lot of these numbers on this page right here are tied to numbers on that first page. Now, this very top section, this is about the ambulance and emergency government. But if you scroll down to the very bottom, you're going to see all these departments going by. And you can scroll pretty quickly. This is very complex, and I don't understand all of this and how it all fits together, but I know it's all very important. But at the very bottom, there's a section, this section right here, and everything. Actually, could you scroll just a little bit further up, Mr. Langrick? So starting with the row right there, property and liability insurance, and going all the way down to, and if you scroll down further, going all the way down to interest on general fund investments, those things are all collapsed into general. And there are a lot of things buried in here that I know we talk about, as part of our budget. For example, libraries. Libraries is within general. Tri-County Airport is within general. Our membership in the Chamber of Commerce is within general. Our revenue from county sales tax is here. We have interest on taxes is in here. We get state aids in through general. And so in order to understand a lot of the changes we made, you also have to look at this section of the document so you can see how it translates to general on the previous page of negative 2.8 million. So there are also a few things in here that I hadn't seen, since we hadn't looked at this document back when we were setting the budget. So some changes got made to different departments or different fund numbers. Some of them I think we're aware of. Some of them might be a little newer. They were to me. So I just wanted to give the committee a chance to look at this and ask questions and give comments. And especially maybe to start thinking about, do we have ideas for how would it be helpful to have this budget document look when we're setting the budget for 2022? If you have any ideas there, I think it'd be good to talk about those. Is this so overwhelming? No one wants to admit how overwhelming it is?
Actually, I can't forward that to my printer, but just those 2 pages when we meet in person, I'd like to have a paper copy because it's much easier to go through and mark and everything.
And, that reminds me, Supervisor Gentis, at many Finance and Personnel Committee meetings, we've been given a cash trial balance spreadsheet, which I think we're used to marking on, but that is not the same thing as this. And they don't always match up. And I don't understand. I can't claim to understand, how they relate to each other.
The cash trial balances, I think, are telling you what is in your funds, and some of them are non-lapsing funds, so that the totals could be rolling in from other years, where the budget document's just going to be telling you what you're going to be allocating towards that fund in a given year, if that makes sense, Mr. Chair.
Now, on the first page of the budget document that we were looking at, do all of those rows, do all those categories, do those match up with the cash trial balance? Are they the same, or are they different lists? To me, they look different, I think, but I don't know how or why. And
Mr. Chairman.
I don't know if we have to get all the questions answered today. I think it's good to just get some of these questions out too, so that we as a committee get more familiar with the documents. But Supervisor Seat?
Mr. Chairman, I think that, maybe we ought to have Mr. Langreck and other accounting people, if we needed, to give us a tutorial, board education tutorial in a separate kind of meeting to educate people on how to read and analyze the budget and how to read and understand and analyze the other financial documents. A budget, this budget format is just an organization and classification of categories of expenditures. They don't represent necessarily specific accounts, and they don't necessarily add up to or meet across the board equally to the cash balance. You may have several items here that might relate to one line, the cash balance, but it's an entirely different thing. This is a budget is a guide, an approved document by the county, and it's used as a guide throughout the year to measure how we are performing in each department. It's a way of measuring performance of employees, but it's also a way of tracking expenditures and on a timely basis, either monthly or quarterly or annually. That's what a budget is. It's a document in progress that we use as a tool mostly.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, is that Ms. Cooper?
Yes. I sent an email to both you and Mr. Langrick yesterday. The numbers that are listed for land conservation and those two things were when we were going to be losing an employee. And then after you guys met and it was changed back, I sent those documents. So the numbers for land conservation, I thought they were approved the other way, and these show up with us losing one. So I'm confused.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to the year before with the water study.
Yes.
So
So my
I
understanding
think,
that these were not the numbers that were approved after, everything. So I'm confused, and yeah, I don't know. I guess I need some direction or something, needs to be looked at.
well, I don't know. I mean, there could be other things that, because a lot of us haven't seen this document until now, department heads included. There could be other things that, are errors, you could say, or mistakes or misperceptions we had last fall. So I think that's one reason to get this out is I think everyone should be taking a look at things they care about in the budget and making sure that they are aware of what was adopted and get in touch with the administrator and the accounting supervisor or whoever, probably starting with Mr. Langreck, just letting him know if you see anything that surprises you in here. And I think it is really our responsibility. I think it's a good idea from supervisor's seat to educate us as a county board. I'm sure staff could be maybe helped by some of this too, how to read and analyze the budget. Those are the words I wrote down. And I think as committee members, we really got to, we're responsible for getting to know this budget better and better. So Ms. Cooper, I got your email. I think Mr. Langreck did too. And I think that's just, it's part of the growing pains of shifting forms of government. We need to have a lot more, we're continually working on making this process more transparent, of developing and setting a budget. And there are going to be some errors or mistakes along the way.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Committee members, any further from other committee members who haven't spoke up? Any comments on this?
Mr. Chair, I will just say that I really appreciate having all of this laid out before us so we can start to digest all of it. And yeah, I think it's really important. We need to make sure that we're not making those kind of mistakes as to what we think we passed versus what actually ends up in our numbers. So I'm appreciative that this has been provided, and I think this will help us as we move into our next budget process.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the thing we have in front of us today is to figure out, would it be helpful for people to have this on the website, for committee members to have this on our website?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Supervisor Turk.
on the website may not be a bad idea, but at a minimum in our folders on the iPads.
Okay. The way it's laid out on the website right now, I'm not sure about the iPads, but on the website right now, MIS has put a link on our homepage that says 2020 budget summary, and it's just one link, and it just goes right to the PDF. What I was thinking is we might need a separate website just for budget documents, and keep the 2020 budget out there so that we can reference back to that if we need to, but get the 2021 budget on there also. So having two links, one to 2021, one to 2020. Yep, Mr. Langrick.
Mr. Chair, MIS has configured the administrator website with a sub-page that has Richland County budget. We could begin housing them underneath that page if you, if that works for you. If that's too far hidden back behind the screen, I can understand that as well. But underneath, drop down departments, administrator on the scroll on the top is one of the options is budget.
Mr. Chair, I will just comment on that because I've now been to all 72 counties' websites. Many of them that have county administrators, the budget is under that department. Sometimes there's a note on their homepage that says, references that the budget documents are under the administrator's separate page, but for many counties, it is under the county administrator's page on the websites.
Okay. Is that enough direction for staff hearing those few comments? Okay.
Do you want us to put them on Clinton's page and then put the link on the front page to go back to his page?
I think so, unless anyone wants to object to that way of doing it. I'm not hearing objections, and yeah, it sounds like maybe on the iPads would be helpful too, for what Supervisor Turk mentioned. Okay, well, I think we can go ahead and move on then to agenda item number 9, 2022 budget development process and timeline. Mr. Langrick.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion to approve revisions to the 2020 budget development process and timeline. Background on this is by the County Board Committee structure document, the Finance Personnel Committee is tasked to annually prepare a budget for the county for submission to the County Board for its approval at the annual meeting. As the process continues to develop and shifts in the administrator's focus, changes below are proposed to amend the timeline and tasks. The purpose of this process and timeline is to track key budget elements and decision points and efforts to effectively build a 2020 operating and lending budget. So we've kind of upgraded our schedule. We had a little bit more basic of a schedule that we were using, kind of just had some tasks with some target months on it. Now that we've kind of expanded and taken on understanding that we have a need for 2 meetings a month.
Supervisor Turk, you forgot to mute yourself.
Sorry about that.
That's okay, no worries.
And understand that we've kind of taken on now 2 meetings per month and dealing with more variables that we're kind of bringing to the table here to shake out. We have a revised plan before you today as a kind of a map on how we're going to get through such elements as union negotiations, capital improvements, capital projects, our short-term loan financing, compensation plan, a review of our fund assignments that we've talked about and kind of touched on a little bit today, a review and affirmation of partnerships, health insurance and benefits renewals, and then building all that into eventually landing at our discussions again on an operating budget. So again, the plan today has proposed dates. Certainly things can flex around and shift in the event that we are expediting projects or they're getting delayed. But at least this kind of keeps the tasks at hand visible, as well as kind of puts in a what I hope is a feasible approach on trying to reach these decision points before we get to the end of the time. And as soon as we start entering that July, August, September time frame, everything gets mighty crunched, and meeting time gets more and more compressed. So I will turn it back over to yourself, Mr. Chair, for any types of concerns, questions, or recommendations to change or reprioritize some of these dates and times.
Okay, committee members. Silence must mean everyone likes it.
It looks good. Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it looks great.
Agreement as well.
Okay, so then we're looking for a motion to approve. Let's see, what's the language here? I'll read it. The motion is to approve revisions to the 2022 budget development process and timeline.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Brewer, a second by Cooey. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Got a lot of work ahead of us. So thank you, Mr. Langrick. Let's see, the next agenda item is capital projects planning process. And that's back to Mr. Langrick again.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion to approve the capital projects planning process. Background on this item is on the February 2nd, 2021 meeting. Finance and Personnel Committee took action to accept a capital improvements capital projects planning format and guidance language that was disseminated to departments in gathering the requests for needed projects. As a result of this effort, the 2022 capital improvement projects planning requests were received from the departments, and it currently sits at a requested amount of about $2.5 million in projects requested for from these projects requested to go against what we're seeing right now for our short-term debt funding as a solution is about 2.4. If Richland County engages in short-term loan financing again, we may have an estimated about $1,050,000 of usable funds, accounting for potential improvements with our net new construction. Our usable funds for this year was about at $1,030,000. So without further impacting and raising the millage rate as we had done last year, we'd have about $1,050,000 as an estimate. So this is approximately $1,423,257 in unfunded requests. The following process is proposed in reviewing, assessing, and selecting projects for 2022. Review on April 6th, committee reviews the 2020 project capital improvements and capital projects tracker. At that same meeting on April 6th, the committee reviews the submitted project summary sheets. And then on the 6th, the committee takes action to request any types of additional information, in fact, that you would have. You may request additional information from departments or the commissions on the projects. You may request feedback from all county, from the entire county board via survey, kind of like we had done with the operating budget last year. And there may be requests for recommendations of a plan by the administrator. And again, these are there might be more than this, but these are just the proposed types of actions that we would take on the 6th. To have an understanding, to kind of show you what we visualize bringing forward to you, I'd be asking departments and commissions to put together one-page summaries on their project to help everybody understand what the project is. We'd be answering the questions of what is the project and what service does it support, why is it needed and when does it need to be in place, what are the risks and consequences of going without, deferring until later year, or reducing it, and then a segment at the bottom for additional comments, previous history on the project, etc. Also on the sheet, of course, we'd be trying to capture the projected cost, if it's a single year project or multiple year project, and then a recommended funding source. So using our Tri-County Airport as a draft example, and again, this is a draft example, We would receive summaries back from departments for their requested items that kind of help explain those topics. So those items would come back to you on the 6th. You would also have then the actual tracker. This shows our 2021 projects, and then this is our main focus for this year is getting things in place for what the 2022 projects look like. On a following meeting on May 4th, the committee would review additional information as requested from departments on the projects. Committee would review county feedback from all the county board members if we in fact go that way. The committee would review a recommendation of a plan from the administrator, again, if we go that way. And the committee would discuss outlook and options for the projects. Followed on by a meeting on May 1st, then we would present an administrator's proposal on what it looks like. The committee then would be able to take different actions on the items to kind of balance the scales of reaching how we're going to fund the projects, or shifting the projects, deferring them to future years. Some of those motions may include to cut projects, to defer projects, to expedite projects and bring them up to closer years, to reduce how much is going to go to a project, or potentially to reallocate different funds for the projects. And then the committee on that same meeting then in May 21st would approve a plan with allocated funding sources, and then recommend to the county board for adoption in June. With this in place, then we would have kind of things again set in knowing how we're going to approach our operation budgets by having these pieces in place. And then obviously this too kind of facilitates knowing if we're going to engage again in the short-term financial funding for these. We would be in a position of knowing where what our priorities are and how we're going to attack that as a funding source as well. So that is what I have for you. The process will set up capital improvements and projects for 2022, and it hopefully helps us fully assess and appreciate our growing deferred maintenance needs as well. Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman?
Got to unmute myself. Go ahead, Supervisor Seat.
Is Administrator Langrick asking for a motion to approve this documented, or this process that he's documenting?
Yes, he is. He is asking for a motion to approve the capital projects planning process.
I make that motion.
Okay, motion by Seep.
Melissa, I'll second.
Okay, second by Luck. So discussion on this. We got a question from Supervisor Caro, who's in attendance today. He's asking Mr. Langreck what 9D means. And that's the one that reads that in late May, we may wish to make a motion to reduce the total project apportionment.
Mr. Chair, if you're reducing apportionment, that might be for some projects in which you're not funding the entire request. So if it's like a request to pick on Sheriff's Office of 4 squad cars, maybe you're reducing the allocation to 2. If it's a request to do an entire kind of an airport project, maybe you're deferring it to say we're only going to cover part of an airport project. So it's kind of for ones that may have availability to do less is what the mindset with that is, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Other committee members, questions or comments?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Supervisor Brewer.
This elevates the whole discussion of capital to put it out in front instead of an afterthought. Every budget process I've been involved in, except for last year, was, well, let's bring up capital improvements. I remember having HHS add that to their agenda as kind of an afterthought, a new roof. Well, that was one way to get it out there for discussion, but not the best way. And this is the best way.
All right. I see some head nodding from Supervisor Gentis, so. All right, if there's no other comments, let's go ahead and vote. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. We have a capital improvement planning process for the first time. Thank you, Mr. Langrick. So agenda item number 11, COVID impact on 2020 budget. This was an item that Supervisor Luck had requested at a couple previous meetings. So Mr. Langrick.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion to accept financial report regarding the 2020 budget and COVID impacts. In July of 2020, Richland County Administrator reported the following estimated department impacts resulting from shutdowns, operational changes in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, or other unplanned expenditures. I delivered a report to you that showed some calculated, estimated, reduced revenues from the Treasury's Department of approximately $178,000 in sales tax, $100,000 in interest, potential $215,000 in property tax. And this was based off of a study through Wisconsin Counties Association through Forward Analytics, where they were kind of gauging on their best guess and their data trends of what potentially it could look like. We also received different notifications from departments on impacts of their expenditures, with some reductions as well as some increases. One item that became apparent and is something that we're hoping to address going forward into the following years is our placement funds again, and going over, as well as we had indications that stimulus money was going to be coming down and that Pine Valley Community Village would have access to those both through the CARES Act and through other stimulus programs. So our total gap that we were anticipating for 2020 was around $391,000. In later communications with departments in December, and again, these are estimated impacts, we looked at, again, the same types of numbers from our Treasury revenues. Our sales tax, in fact, went up. As we found out through the pandemic, more folks were shopping local than expected, with not being able to participate in much in different tourisms and travels and things like that. It was gathered that they're shopping local. We did actually have a further decrease, though, in our interest investments than we had anticipated. And our indications as of right now is that we're not anticipating a whole lot of delinquencies in real estate tax collections, but we're not really going to know that, though, until we reach the July kind of tax payment type of period. So, and we still don't have any indication through a state budget if there's going to be any types of shared revenue decreases. And looking at our other departments, some of the significant types of changes that we kind of experienced were our placements. We were in fact over a little bit further than we had anticipated. In looking in the same way as we did back in June of monies, though, that are offsetting to be transferred from Health and Human Services towards it. We had some offset. Additional staffing for Health and Human Services was covered by different revenue streams and grants. We had anticipated land conservation overages with not solving their housing and a water study problem. Pine Valley Community Village is in a situation where they did have an abundance that came in with stimulus funding, so they were able to generate additional types of revenues that were able to come in that were unforeseen. There are some of those funds that may have to go back, so in allocating what may have to go back, we're still anticipating a plus. Our Simon's Recreational Complex, as we had figured, was going to be operating slightly at a loss, and considering our share with the city puts us at about 24,000 beyond what we had kind of considered with budget. And then of course our lost revenues at the UW campus with food service. So overall, though, at this point in estimating, it looks like we're not at quite of a loss as we'd thought, potentially 240,000 versus what we were anticipating or expecting possibly in June of 391,000. But again, these are estimates. Things will come clearer to us as we get into the audit process. Bill Moyne-Lean, our representative from Johnson Block, they're tentatively set to begin to come in and begin the audit on April 12th. And at that point, then we'll be able to balance and tie things together and see what the final dollar amount is, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so reactions from the committee?
Mr. Chair, it's Melissa.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Administrator Langrick, what about the latest COVID package that just passed out of the federal government? I've seen numbers of something like 2.5 or something potentially coming to Richland County. How does that impact, or does it impact any of this from the 2020 overspend?
Right now, it's my understanding that Richland County is allocated 3.3 million. And as of right now, there's 4 different criteria that it can be used in response to, and I don't have it in front of me, but there's 4 general categories. I think one is for ancillary type pays for first line responders. One of them is for water, sewer, broadband infrastructure, and then there's 2 other ones. So they do have categorized impacts that we can use it for. We're waiting though for the Department of Treasury to come out with a more specified guidance, because those are the criteria that was set in place by the actual, the right or the bill language or the past law language. So now it's up to the Treasury Department to write the actual guidance through administrative language on what we can use it for. Another part of the question though becomes then, in Wisconsin Counties Association through National Counties Association, is trying to figure out if any of it is potentially going to be fungible. If we're able to allow it towards health and human services, public health, are we able to take, say, $1 million, and this is just a fictitious type of a number, if we apply that towards our health and human services, public health type of a budget, are we then able to reallocate general funds taken from tax purposes or from property taxes and reapportion those without any types of strings towards other types of functions? So until we get those types of answers kind of shook out, we really don't know what we're going to be able to use it for and how we can absorb some of our impacts holes or bolster services, or what's the best way to appropriate those monies. Another part of it though that is for sure though is that we'll have the first half will come to us this year, and then the second half will come to us 12 months later. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Supervisor Seep.
may I ask Mr. Langrick, do you know if, in addition to the 3.3 million to the county, is there a separate fund that is distributed to townships and cities and villages?
There is, Supervisor Seep. Just let me, if you can give me just a minute here, let me pull up my email from Kyle Christensen, and I'll be able to tell you the information that he shared with me. So if you do have a minute just to hold.
I can hold all day for you.
You flatter me, Supervisor Seep. Kyle, where is Kyle?
As Adley Stevenson said, I can stand here till hell is over.
Okay, so the language I got from Kyle Christensen, again, who works with Wisconsin Counties Association, the first part of it of allowable uses of recovery funds. Category 1 is response to the public health emergency with respect to COVID-19 or its negative economic impacts. This includes assistance to households, small businesses, and nonprofits, or aid to impacted industries such as tourism, travel, and hospitality. Not an all-inclusive list. Use number 2 is respond to workers performing essential work during the COVID-19 public health emergency by providing premium pay to eligible workers of the county that are performing such essential work, or by providing grants to eligible employers that have eligible workers who perform essential services. Category 3 for allowable uses of the recovery funds is for the provision of government services to the extent of the reduction in revenue, i.e. online, property, or income tax due to public health emergency relative to revenues collected in the most recent full fiscal year of the county prior to the emergency. And then item number 4 is make necessary investments in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. Then a spreadsheet was also sent with allocations at the state level, and counties, Richland County, and we are anticipating approximately $3,345,000 is right now our apportionment in our counties. All the counties, the towns and villages all have their own individual apportionments that are not considered part of R 3.3.
Excellent.
Okay, anyone else on the committee?
Um,
Go ahead.
Chair,
Yeah,
just
Supervisor
a
Jensen.
small thing, but $30,000 because of absentee voting. I don't really think that seems like a very high amount for. I know we had quite a few absentee, but I mean that couldn't be postage because that was done by the city. I don't quite know why that is.
We don't have to know why.
My understanding, we're generating the documents and the ballots and the mailing.
That seems high.
We'll take the money.
We didn't get any money for it.
Okay, so we've got a motion here before us to accept the financial report regarding the 2020 budget and COVID-19 impacts. So I'm looking for a motion there from the committee.
Is Supervisor Dennis, I so move.
Okay, motion by Jensis,
It's Melissa, I'll second.
second by Luck. All those in favor of the accepting this information, please say aye.
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 Okay, so we now have a financial report on this. Thank you, Mr. Langreich. Agenda item number 12, payroll signature authority, Mr. Langreich.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion to authorize the addition of Josh Bell, Accounting Supervisor, and Clinton Langrick, County Administrator, as payroll signature authorities of Richland County through the Richland County Bank, and to remove Derek Kalish, former Accounting Supervisor, from the Richland County account. The background on this item is the current signature authorities for Richland County account is Victor Vlasic and Derek Kalish. The bank requires minutes actions by the Richland County Finance and Personnel Committee to add and remove names from the authorization list. The proposal is to add Josh Bell, again, Accounting Supervisor, and myself as the County Administrator as payroll signature authorities of Richland County, with intentions of continuing the transfer of financial responsibilities from the clerk's office to the administrator's office. Mr. Chair.
Okay, so who would like to make a motion for this?
So moved.
I have a question.
Okay, we got a motion by Brewer. I'll go ahead and second it. Murphy Lopez will second. Supervisor Pensis, go ahead.
I assume it doesn't say here that we're deleting Derek Kalish. I think it should say that, right? We're leaving Victor, Josh Bell, Clint Landry, and Victor, right?
It does say remove Derek Kalish.
Well, I
From
must
the
be
motion.
not reading well.
It's on the third line of the motion there.
Oh,
Yep.
oh, and to remove. I see it. Okay, I got it. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. We have 2 new people on our signature lines. Agenda item number 13, complaint regarding access to court resources. So I'm going to give just a little introduction on this item. Why is this on our agenda? There's two different reasons. One, we are the Finance and Personnel Committee is the complaint appeal body according to our recent policy that the county board adopted in February. So typically, if an employee has a complaint, it will go to their department head, and then the department head will forward it on to Mr. Langreck. But in this situation, it involved elected officers, and so this committee structure document also has oversight of elected offices. So under my reading of all of this, it skipped the official complaint policy and went right to the appeal body for those two reasons. I did consult with John Anderson about how to put this on the agenda. So I just wanted to let people know that. And then the last thing I want to mention is, I encourage everyone to keep this item professional. We've never heard a complaint before, so this is our first time doing it, and let's just make sure we stay respectful and professional. I've got an idea. I'll just run this by the committee and just see if this process sounds okay with the committee. I've got a 4-step process for getting through this item here. I don't think it will take that long, but I just want to lay out how I'd like to walk through this. First of all, to hear the complaint and the recommended remedy. Second of all, to hear the response. Third, for committee members to be able to ask questions. And then fourth, any committee member could make a motion related to this if we so choose to do that. Does anyone have any objection to that way of walking through this item? Okay, we'll go ahead and start with the first step then, to hear the complaint and the recommended remedy. So I received complaints from 3 people. I forwarded those complaints to all the committee members. Has anyone not reviewed the complaints that I sent yesterday? And if not, I want to make sure to verbalize what the complaint is. But if everyone's heard it, I don't want to verbalize it. So did anyone not review it?
Mr. Chairman, who were the complaints from?
The complaints were from the clerk of court, the district attorney, and the maintenance supervisor.
Yes, I didn't really count the maintenance supervisor comments as a complaint, merely corroborating whatever.
Yep, that's fair. Okay, so it sounds like everyone read the complaint. I did ask the clerk of court I invited her to attend today. She's on our call. And Ms. Kleist, if you could just add what your recommended remedy is. Part of our complaint policy, that when I was reading through the complaint policy after the complaint came in, is every complaint should include a recommended remedy. So I just asked Ms. Kleist if she could present that to the committee today. Ms. Kleist, are you there, and can you do that?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead. We're
Great.
looking forward to your recommendation.
Thank you. I would like to add, when you stated who the complaints were from, none of those people were the direct witnesses of these. I am aware that there are also complaints from direct witnesses, and those weren't included in the ones that you stated. There is a written complaint by the individual who witnessed the concern in the room being used by the jurors, and that had photos attached to it of the signs that were posted outside the door stating that those rooms were for the jury only, and that was where the access was prohibited. So I want to note that. And I'm also aware that there was a written complaint from the district attorney that was forwarded to the administration last week. That was on behalf of the other person who witnessed the unauthorized access, which occurred in the room that was being used by the Assistant Attorney General, the prosecutor for the state's evidence in the trial. So those names were not listed in there. I would encourage you guys to do your research and get your hands on those complaints so that you do have the information that is not third hand. My recommended remedy.
Ms. Weiss, I just want to interrupt. I do want to say that within the complaints that we did receive from both you and the district attorney, other people were named in there, so you're correct, and that there were additional people. So
yes, and one of those people named in there themselves made a written complaint and forwarded it yesterday.
Okay.
And that is not one of them that you stated, and that was a direct witness to this. So
Okay,
I have not seen that noted. Thank you.
I have not seen those, just to be clear. So
I think maybe Clinton has those.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, let's Ms. Kleiss finish, and then I'll go to you, Mr. Seep.
And so for my recommended remedy, I would suggest that we look at the keys to all areas, the locks to all areas, and that maybe we need to install some new keys and definitely reissue keys, keep track of who has access to what. And on the court side of the building, I would definitely say that it should only be able to be normally accessed by court personnel. Of course, everything in the building needs to be able to be accessed by emergency personnel, law enforcement and such. But as a clerk of court, I do not have keys to areas on the other side of the building, to the other elected officials' areas. And, but I'm aware that at least the individual who unauthorized entered 2 areas of the courts last week, they have keys to all of the courts areas, and I think that needs to be changed. So I guess I would be in favor of some sort of a key control strategy.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kleist. And then before I go to you, Mr. Seep, we've heard the recommended remedy. Step 2 is to hear the response from the clerk. We received a response from the clerk this morning. Do any committee members need to hear that response? Okay, I don't hear anyone, so Supervisor Seep, I'll go ahead and hand it off to you we'll go into questions here from committee members.
Yes, I was going to ask Mr. Chairman with regard to Ms. Kleiss, knowing what she knows, her proposed remedy, and knowing the witnesses' information that we don't know. Her proposed remedy is reference to the keys, and I thought about this a lot, and I know that there are a lot of people who have keys, and for whatever reason, some were just given a key by a janitor or someone else. And I noticed that during the period of the initial COVID thing, when we were controlling entry to the bottom main entrance, there were some people who had keys who were still coming in on the east end of the courthouse. It seemed to be some sort of a status symbol to have a key for some people. And I don't know whether the key that allows one entrance to the east door of the courthouse is a master key for all the doors in the courthouse or not. But I totally agree that all the keys should be called in, and that keys should be issued to only those people who are specifically authorized on a list and have a need for them. Thank you. And that's I agree with Ms. Kleiss that the problem with keys is a major issue. Mr. The letter this morning from the clerk referenced his duties with the keys over a period of years from 1992 on. And if those are still a part of his duties, then somehow that needs to be considered and taken into account. He's called upon to open doors for people, and whatever, unless that duty is specifically assigned to somebody else, duty, authority, and responsibility, we need to nail that down as well.
Thank you, Mr. Steep. Just to be clear, because I feel like we're kind of leaving a lot out in our very professional discussion that we're having. To be clear, I do not have concerns about various people like in this part of the building that have been accessing areas they shouldn't. That was not it at all. What happened last week was the court did have rooms that were secured and posted as secured, reserved for use by the jury trial. I am the elected official who has a responsibility to keep these areas a certain way, to keep events happening a certain way. And I did not authorize anyone to let themselves into any rooms while jurors were in there or while attorneys were in there. And whether they found rooms open or anything, it was not their duty, it was not their job to be checking whether rooms were open or closed. And also, I have been informed that the doors between the two sides of the building were locked. So the person who gained access without authorization into areas and could have caused a mistrial, that's what could have happened here. That person would have had to let themselves into some door somewhere with a key. They had no reason to be over here. They had no reason to check anything out. We did not need their assistance, and it was very improper. It was really uncool. So, at any rate, that's what it would be akin to me going into a room that this other elected official was using for elections. I would not do that. And that is what happened here. And you guys need to realize that. I realize we're being careful with our discussion, but I don't want anybody to be confused what we're talking about here.
Yeah,
And this is District Attorney for Harper.
Just a second. I'll let you go, Ms. Harper, just a second. I do want to just bring everyone's attention to the fact too that one of our responsibilities on this committee, under the committee structure document, is to V as in Valley, the committee shall administer the personnel aspects of courthouse security. So I believe what this committee's role here, in addition to hearing the complaints, is to make sure that we have personnel who are responsible for courthouse security. And my opinion on hearing this is that we need to make sure who is responsible for access to various parts of the building has been determined. And I don't know that in anyone's job description that we have that, or we might need to do a little research into whose job description currently says that. My guess would be is that it's unwritten at this point, but maybe it is written and we just need to figure out where it's written. So Ms. Harper, go ahead.
Sure, and I'm stopped on a ridge right now, so I haven't heard this entire discussion, but I know that Ms. Kleiss mentioned, and we are having a very professional conversation here because, quite frankly, we're being very careful. In any event, during this trial, when there was access to the prosecutor's office, which was posted as being could not be unsecured and was posted as being reserved for the prosecution, you know, it opens us up to not only a mistrial and not only, it also opens us up to a breach of confidentiality. I spoke with Ms. Fields about this, and I'm sorry if she already spoke about it. We have we had evidence in that room, evidence in a trial that someone was being tried for anal rape. Someone was being tried for child abuse. Someone was being tried for strangulation. And in the room,
the prosecutor's room, we have actual physical evidence. We have photos of children. We have things like that. And we have CPS records, which are confidential. So we can't have anyone coming into an office that has been reserved. And if you want to check the doors or not, once the door is checked and no one's in there, there's no reason for anyone to remain in any of those offices. But it opens us up to a mistrial. It opens us up to damage to evidence. And quite frankly, it opens the county up to various HIPAA violations and confidentiality violations. What happened here was absolutely unacceptable. It was posted that it was reserved, as was a reservation for the defense. This was the first case, the first trial that we had since COVID, the pandemic. This was the first jury trial for that. We also had to sanitize our room, and that was being done by our victim witness coordinator. It's done the night before, the doors are locked, we come in, and someone has been in there, and Ms. Fields has to sanitize again. Other than that, we really need to have a way for different rooms to be accessed by different keys, and those keys can be checked out. No one really needs to go into the law library unless they go, and it used to be the case, unless they go down to the clerk's office. They might not be the holder of the key anymore, but we had the chicken, right? The chicken was a key fob that had a key attached to it, and you would go downstairs and you would check out the key and you would go into the law library, and when you were done, you would go back to the clerk's office. So we have in the past have had a way to manage the keys. There should also be a very clear way as to how rooms can be could be reserved. It was always my understanding that if we were on the new part of the courthouse, that was up to the clerk. If we were on the old part of the courthouse, which involves the court system, that was up to the circuit court. So that definitely needs to be delineated, because this situation was very problematic.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Harper. Anyone else from, I should say, any committee members have any questions for folks here today?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just add a comment.
Yep, go ahead, Supervisor Seat. Yep.
I totally agree that the clerk of court should have complete control over the security of the area of her responsibilities.
Okay, any other committee members?
This is Melissa. I'll just comment briefly that, in all of my previous jobs, security was of utmost importance, and, having a person designated and having a plan and having documentation as to who has keys is, I guess I'm surprised, or maybe I'm not surprised, but I guess I'm surprised that we don't have that procedure in place. So absolutely, if we have someone designated already, we need to figure it out. And if not, we need to make sure we designate and create a system in which these can be distributed as is appropriate. Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, I just want to say that I agree with Melissa. I think we just need to figure out the system here and figure out who should have a key to the whole building and who should have keys to which side.
I think that it is important for law enforcement to have keys to the entire building, but then as Ms. Harper said, specifically keyed areas. No one person who is elected or works in any of these offices in this building should have a key to the entire building anymore, because none of us are the building manager. I believe that is the administrator now. And so if any one person were to have keys other than law enforcement, probably it would be him. But certainly no elected official or personnel from the business side of the building should be able to let themselves into court secured areas with a key during court events or for any other reason.
May I say something?
Who is that speaking up?
Hi, my name is Andrea Fields. I'm the victim witness coordinator.
Yep.
So to be very clear, my name's Andrea from the district attorney's office. I was one of the witnesses. And I've been with the county for 20 years. I've been in the courthouse building for 15. And up until that day, I don't think I've ever imagined that this would be a problem. I mean, I trust everybody in that building. But what I wanted to make clear was the incident that I witnessed, this was something very, very deliberate. There was a feeling of, you don't get to tell me what to do. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't, the person said to me was, well, you should have a sign posted. When I pointed to the sign, he said, well, you have every goddamn room in this building reserved. And I think I was just so stunned that someone would deliberately do that. I don't know the other people in the building that would deliberately do that. It just felt very belittling, demeaning. I can speak to what was in that room. I mean, there were 8.5 by 11 photographs of the injuries to this little child. There were, go ahead, does somebody have a question?
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Supervisor Seep, go ahead.
I think we better be careful here. We're getting into an area that we should almost be in closed session.
Ms. Fields, I think we've heard what Ms. Kleist and Ms. Harper have also said. It seems to be a similar story to what you're saying. I think this committee is at the point where we've gathered enough information that I'd like to make a motion to the committee that we a motion to the administrator to identify personnel to be in charge of courthouse security. So that'll be my motion. Let me restate that again. I'd like to make a motion to direct the administrator to identify personnel to be in charge of courthouse security and return to the Finance and Personnel Committee with his recommendations.
Mr. Chairman, may I offer an amendment to that motion?
It's got to have a second first before we have an amendment.
I'll second the motion and offer an amendment.
Okay, so we got a motion by myself and a second by Supervisor Seep, and then go ahead with your motion to amend, Supervisor
My
Seep.
amendment would be to ask Mr. Leinreich, the administrator, to prepare a list of individuals to survey and prepare a list of individuals who have keys and determine in accordance with the clerk's guidelines what keys should be called in and a system for issuing keys should be designed.
Okay, so we've got a motion to
the administrator can straighten that out.
Well, and okay, so we've got a motion to amend. Is there a second to that amendment?
It was a little fuzzy. I think it should be more specific.
I mean, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, your motion was for him to come to us with a plan, right? Which would include all of those components that Supervisor Seep was talking about?
Well, I believe so. Yeah, my intention, so I've heard the phrase key control plan thrown out. I'm assuming that courthouse security, of course, includes a key control plan, but it may include other components as well that we might not be talking about today. So my motion matches the language that we have in our committee structure document for this committee, that we are in charge of the personnel aspects of courthouse security. So that's why my motion was related to personnel and courthouse security. I think the key control plan could be a component of that.
Mr. Chairman, may I say that with regard to the keys? We have an important trial going on right now. This is very important. We need to get those keys in.
Well, my understanding is that a verdict has been reached in the trial, but we need to be, that doesn't mean that this isn't important. I'm just saying that,
It's still important.
Yeah, yeah. So if we need to, yeah, so if the motion to amend is, okay, so I'm going to reread my motion. My motion was to direct the administrator to identify personnel to be in charge of courthouse security and return to Finance and Personnel Committee with his recommendations. And what I might do is suggest that the amendment be after the phrase courthouse security, including, add the words, including a key control plan, and then carry on to and return to Finance and Personnel Committee. So
I'll second that part of the motion amendment.
okay, so we got a motion by Seep and a second by Gentis. I'm going to read the amended motion, or I'm sorry. No, we need to vote on the amendment first. Any further discussion on that amendment? Okay, so all those in favor of the motion to add the words including a key control plan to the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so that motion to amend carries. So now the amended motion reads, a motion to direct the administrator to identify personnel to be in charge of courthouse security, including a key control plan, and return to the Finance and Personnel Committee with his recommendations. So any discussion on the amended motion?
Yes.
Supervisor Seep.
Don't we have a committee on courthouse security?
We actually do. I'm on that committee.
Oh, good.
But we haven't met in a really long time because I believe it's the judge that is in charge of that committee.
Well, I suggest you meet post haste.
I can contact.
Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
yeah, Supervisor Cooey, go ahead.
I mean, if there's a big concern to get this done, why don't we just add locks to them doors? And then it doesn't matter who has what key, where, and then you have, when you need to do this, you can lock it and be done with it. And then whoever, Stacy or whoever has the key, that's good enough.
Address what the issue is and take the key away from the person who had unauthorized access.
I don't disagree with that too, but if you need to do something right away, how many keys are out there that you don't know about? Many, I'm assuming. So if you need to fix a problem, you can fix it real easy by putting another lock on it.
I don't think anybody, there's nobody outside of the court that has those type of keys to access that I'm aware of.
I hope you're right.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Cooey
Yeah,
always has.
Go ahead.
Mr. Cooey always has excellent ideas. He's absolutely brilliant, but in this case, I have to disagree. It would cost a hell of a lot of money to change the locks, and I mean a lot of money. It's a hell of a lot easier just to pull in all the keys.
I hope you find all the keys.
Okay, so any further discussion on the amended motion?
So let's just talk.
Supervisor Gentis, go ahead.
We're talking about our county administrator going ahead with this, and then when they threw in that we had a committee on security, and we're not addressing those two different issues.
Well,
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Supervisor Turk.
What we're talking about here is access and accessing, possession of keys and who should be doing it, which is a personnel and administrative matter. It's not a structural courthouse security concern.
Okay. I understand that.
Yeah, and yeah, really going back to that committee structure document, that gives us our boundaries we're supposed to stay within on this committee. And our boundary really is personnel in charge of courthouse security. I have not been able to find the courthouse security committee and what they're responsible for in our document. Maybe it's somewhere I'm just not seeing it. I can think of the other committee who may have some say here, and that might be the property committee. And we'd have to read through their list of responsibilities to see where they may have a role here, but really our role is around personnel.
And if it involves access to court resources, it could also be potentially law enforcement judiciary.
Have the sheriff go after the keys.
Yes, could be another one. That's true. Okay, any further discussion on this one? Okay, all those in favor of the amended motion, please say aye.
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 Is anyone opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Kleist, Ms. Harper, if you're still there, and Ms. Fields for coming today and sharing your perspective on this. Definitely revealed something that we needed to address. So, okay, agenda item number 14, future agenda items. Does anyone want to throw anything else out? Yeah, Supervisor Luck.
So when we went through the budgetary process last year and we did not give raises, one of the things we sort of talked about was having a mid-year review. So I think April's probably a little too early, but especially if the audit process is just getting started. But I'm thinking that in May, I would at least like to have the conversation about where we stand financially and if there's any possible way that we can give any kind of raises in 2020.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Gentis?
Yes. Broken record here, but the county administrator mentioned that 3.3 million, number 4, was for water, sewer, and broadband. I'd like to still discuss that broadband some more. And a few years ago, we asked Jason Marshall in the MIS department to do a review and write grants. And I think he should be doing a review of what areas of the county, before we're doing anything else, what areas of the county do not have access. So I'd like some sort of discussion on that.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Gentis. You did bring that up before, and me and the administrator talked about having it on today's agenda, and we punted with all this other stuff going on.
That's okay.
But it's okay to bring things up again. It reminds us of the importance when someone does that. Supervisor Seat, do you have anything?
I don't have anything at this time, Mr. Chairman, but maybe.
Okay.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah, of course. Supervisor Cooey?
I'm good.
Okay, Supervisor Turk?
Nothing to add.
Okay, and Supervisor Brewer, I believe, left to go drive a bus. All right, so we are to agenda item number 15, adjournment. So I'm looking for a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, April the 6th at the Phoenix Center at 1 p.m.
This is Dave. I'll move.
Okay, so motion by Turk, second by Luck. Discussion on that?
Yes, why are we adjourning to the Phoenix Center?
Well, because I think we're ready to start meeting back in person again because the COVID cases are so low and several people have been vaccinated. And
well, do we have room in the county board room?
I think the concern is that several of us still have not been vaccinated. And several people in the public have not been vaccinated, several of our employees. So we want to give them a space where we can space appropriately, space 6 feet apart. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
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 Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll
Thanks.
see you week Tuesday.